Hey everybody, it's Casey, and today I'm doing a book review. I just read How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market. Can you guys see that? I just read that. And I'm going to share with you some really good stuff from it because as I was reading it, I was taking some notes and I'm like, okay, this is really good. I need to take notes. And here's the thing that's really interesting about this. Just to start, that it was originally published in 1960. So this is after he made $2 million in the stock market, but he was doing it from like 1952 to 59. It was like a 6 or 7 year period that he made the 2 million. And so this is way back in the day. And you might say, well, that doesn't do me any good because it's so old. But the truth is that times don't change that much. I mean, the more they change, the more they stay the same, if you know what I mean. Yes, they do change a lot, but a lot of these lessons will be here for a long, long time. Now, let's go ahead and get started with the big lessons. I just wrote them down, and I'm going to share my thoughts. The first one is that it took him to about 6 years to learn all of this, but then once he learned it, he made his money in 6 months, or 18 months rather. He made his money in 18 months. And even after he had his 18-month win strength, he also had some major situations where he almost gave all of his money back, which is pretty much normal for traders. You have a great experience and then you end up having to give it all back. But it took him 6 years. And then once he developed his system, it was 18 months. And he really made some great trades, right? He made some great trades. And that was one of the things that I want to take away as another lesson. And that was the majority of his $2 million happened with like 4 trades. And as I have been looking and learning from my own trading, there are times when I look at my trades and I see that there's lots of tiny little trades that don't do anything for me. And then I'll even see that there's some really big losers. And then I will see that there's some really big winners. And so what that has taught me is if we can eliminate those tiny losers, they don't mean anything. Let's focus on the big winners. You know, I have been studying the 80-20 principle for a long time, and I recently read a book, 80-20 Sales and Marketing, about how to run a business with the 80-20 principle, and that's written by Perry Marshall. Really good book, but that applies not just to business, but it applies to trading. It applies to everything. And if you can learn that 80-20, what that means is that 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of your trades. And this showed up really powerfully in this book. Because this is a girl, and by the way, if you want to read this book, it's in the description. It's really easy to read, and it's good because it's cheap, and it's also good, it's old. But get it, read it, learn some of this stuff. But he outlines every single trade that he made the money on in the book. He talks about each trade in detail. And not too many books where you actually go through and read every single trade that the guy took to make his money. And I actually don't remember reading a book like that before. And so that's pretty good. Now, he might have had some other trades he didn't talk about, but the trades in the book were pretty well detailed. So that is a big lesson, is that the winners were big winners. And if we can somehow evaluate our trading and get the big winners, well, that will be huge for us. Learn to get rid of the big losers, number one, because 80% of your losses come from 20% of your losers. Get rid of the big losers. Just do away with them. Get rid of the tiny winners and focus on the big winners. And if you can learn how to get big winners, which can you do it? Well, Nicolas did it. So yes, you can. And so that was really a big part of it. Then the third thing that stood out to me was that he actually was a dancer. He was a dancer, and he would dance for his full-time job, and it took him all over the world. So he had a full-time job as a dancer. He traveled all over the world, in countries all over the world. I mean, he literally was in countries all over the world. And this is in the 1950s. And I don't even know how it works, but he used something called a telegram or a cable, where he would have quotes sent to him at the hotel that he was staying at, and he would look at the price. And he made his decisions by prices. So he was a full-time trader that was working as a dancer around the world, and he only used prices. So what this really helps me understand is a couple things. That he created a space for himself to come up for thinking and coming up with his ideas. He would sit down, you can see this picture, he would sit down, he would look at the quotes, and he would draw his ideas down, and he was totally isolated from Wall Street, which is not what we think of when we think of successful traders. You think of even successful traders with 15 monitors. You think of them of having like lots of information, a staff of research. But all he did was look at a few numbers on paper to come up with his ideas. And so I think that there's something to be said for less information and focus on your own system. He was very focused on his own system, and he gave himself a space. I've been learning a lot about space, creating a space for yourself to learn and study and think. The strongest muscle is the one in our brains. Do we use it? Or are we just too busy getting information overload? I've heard said that in the internet age, where there's information at our fingertips, I pick up my phone, I've got a supercomputer, information at my fingertips, yet we have so much information, tons of knowledge, but we have information a mile wide, but we only go an inch deep. What if we took a little bit of information and went deep on it and really learned? And that's what he did, is he studied and he eliminated all the distractions, because he couldn't afford to have them, because he was traveling the world and he was working his full-time job as doing his dance show. And so very, very unique situation, especially considering the times they didn't even have the technology. He would phone it in no matter from the hotel. This was before computers. He didn't pay attention to news at all. That was another point that I thought was pretty interesting. He just looked at trends. He bought only trending stocks. He would watch the trends, and he would create boxes. And there was a strategy called the Darvas box. And basically, he would look at the high and the low. It was basically range trading within a trend. So it would go, the price would move up, it would go within a trend, and then it would move up into the next one, and then it would go up into the next one. So it was really range trading with a trend, and he called it a box. And so other people, I think, called it the Darvas box. And it was really good strategy, and it worked really well for him. Another thing that he did was that he would try to find stocks that they were trending, they had good volume, and that were new inventions. And so if you read the book, he talks about like the rocket industry. And it was in the 1950s after World War II, so people were inventing missiles and rockets and things like that. And so now we would be looking at internet stocks or electronic vehicles or biotech, anything that's new and changing the world, because those tend to grow faster than older generation things. So he would look at those companies in a conjunction with trends, and that was all the information he needed. That was it. And another lesson that he had that was very powerful was that he stacked his winners. So he would start with a really small trade. We talk about keeping our losses small. He would start with a really small trade of, for him it was like 250 shares or 500 shares. And then if it lost, well, then his loss was small. But then if it jumped up into the next box, well, then he's like, okay, this is real. And then he would add to his winner. And that's a strategy I've seen a lot of successful traders use, is they stack their winners. And so he stacked his winners. If it would go up even more, he would add more. If it'd go up more, he would add more. And he would buy like 3 or 4 trades until he was really heavily invested. And so with some of these trades, he would have most of his portfolio in. And now a lot of people would say that that was not good risk management, but actually because his stop loss was tight and he would already have profit locked in on the first trade. So if he would buy something at $58 a share, when it was 62, he would move his stop loss to 60 and then he would buy more. So his initial position, there is no risk on already. And then when all 3 positions would move, he had some monster trades, which was really interesting to see that he had. And a couple of them, we talk about his monster trades. GameStop is a big thing nowadays with the short trade. Nicolas Darvas back in the 1950s got himself his own little GameStop. There were short sellers, and he was in on it, and the price ended up exploding, and he got a very favorable trade from a short seller. Now, that's another advantage of getting the trend, is you don't know when it's going to end. And he was very disciplined at holding on to the winners for a long time. And on that short seller, I can't remember what his entry price was, but they called him up and they said, hey, the short sellers are getting squeezed. Do you want to sell this at $100 a share? And he said, no. He said, I'm going to hold on. And he held on. I think he finally got out at $170 a share. And so he was able to triple his money on a really big move. So if you follow your rules and you keep your losses small, every once in a while you're going to get rewarded with a big move. And that's how the traders do really well, is they manage their discipline and their risk, and then every once in a while they get rewarded with something big. Another thing, that a really good lesson, so he had a tight stop loss, and he also followed along with a trailing stop. When the price would move up into the next box, he would go $2 lower, or 2 candles lower. And I don't even know if they had candles then. He was looking at just prices. He would go from one box to the other. But he would always trail his stop. And with all of those things that he did, it was great to see these lessons. And they really just cemented them in me. And that's why I thought I would share it with you, because it's such good stuff. Another thing, that he had quite a few very close calls. After his first big trade, he got his account to $500,000, and he had thought that he cracked the code, and he got really excited. And so he thought, okay, I'll move to New York. And so he moved to New York, and he wasn't dancing. He was going into the stock offices. He was talking to brokers. He was reading news, and he was talking with everyone in Wall Street. And this was after he made $500,000. So you think by the time you make $500,000, you've made it, right? And that's what he thought. But he then started to go on a massive losing streak. He lost $100,000, and he realized that it was distractions. He was listening to tips. He went away from everything that he had learned initially that helped him become a great trader. And so that's really important, that we understand once we find something that works, we need to stick with it. And so he could not figure out, he lost his game. He said that when he was away from it all and he was reading his paper, and another thing about what he would do when he would read the papers, he would do it after the market was closed, because obviously that's when they would put it out, and he would just do it in the evenings. He would read it at night and work late into the night while the market was closed, so he couldn't be distracted. But when he was at Wall Street, all of these distractions got him to go away from his system. And when he was on his A game, he said he was in sync with the markets. Like he used the example. Another good thing about this book is he uses a lot of illustrations. And one of the illustrations he used was a music player, like a piano player, that their ears are trained to hear if a tune is off, right? Because they've just been doing it so much, they get in sync with the music. And he said he was in sync with the market. And when he was in Wall Street at New York City and he was getting all those distractions, he lost his ear, he lost his eye, he lost the being in sync with the market. And so if you let all this information overload mess you up, you listen to gurus, you listen to 15 different systems, you do all of these things that can help you, cause you to lose your ear. And he was really frustrated, and he almost lost everything, and he didn't know what was wrong. Because sometimes that stuff sneaks up on you, right? You have success, you think you cracked the code, and then it sneaks up on you. And so what he did was he got out of New York City, he went to Paris, and he started to go back to what he did before, and then it began to work again. And it took him some time. He had to get his head clear. The fog of New York City, the fog of Wall Street, the fog of the stock market was blinding him, and it had to clear off. It took him some time before he was able to realize success. And that is what he did. And I think that there's a lot that I unpacked here that you can learn from. I just posted the list below in this description. But here's what I want to do. I've got a big stack of books right here. Okay, I've got a big stack of books. And if you guys want me to do more reviews, let me know in the comments. Because I want to do what's helpful to you. I'm going to read these books no matter what, but I want to know if you want to learn about them and save you the effort of reading. Ha ha ha. But this is so valuable. This knowledge is so valuable. And if there's a book that you want me to read, let me know and I'll do it in the comments. But I'm only going to do it if I get at least 50 likes, because that way I know if you guys are enjoying this or not, and a bunch of comments. Let me know what books you want me to do, if you like it or not. But there was a lot that I learned. That was so valuable to me. It encouraged me too, because it helps me realize that other people go through things. And he went through some of the same things that I've gone through. And it also encouraged me because he's doing some of the things that I'm doing in my trading. So it's really exciting to learn from others. And so I hope that you enjoyed this, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.